Welcome back. What we're working with today is we're going to contrast. Look at the difference between implicit and explicit data. Implicit data is indirect, but explicit data is direct. Let's take a moment, and I'd like you to sketch as much of this as you can. But before you do that, let's highlight just a few details I'd like you to make sure you get in there. Number one is the painting subject, American Merchant Marine. Please get that down. Then I'd like you to notice, and I really don't like frankly, the racist caricature in the other one. So we're just going to go with the German Hitler there for now, and the Allied shipping, right? And then you can also see this is another picture that's sort of floating down. Notice that he's throwing darts, and he's got many more darts in his hand. After you've noticed these items, I'd like you to take the time to draw this in your notebook now in a short amount of time. Please do so now. Excellent. So now that we've had a chance to draw it and look at it and sort of get into it, let's talk about explicit data, what you see immediately. And let's talk about implicit data, what takes some time to figure out. Let's start with some of the explicit points. Those of you without a computer, write this on paper. Those of you with a computer, you just write it right here. All right? First, there's some things that we see, words that we see, right? One quote that we see is American Merchant Marine. We also see darts. We also see pictures with darts in them. We see a falling picture. And we see that the darts look like torpedoes a little bit. Now, take a moment, and I'd like you to write down any information that we either missed or to grab some of the information from the screen here. Please take the time to add on to the explicit side of your T-chart now. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch this over in Pear Deck to, let's go with blue. And we're going to talk about implicit data. Implicit data involves information that isn't right there. For instance, English class. What do we learn about characterization based on his stature? Or in math or physics, right? What do we know about, what can we bring that to bear when it comes to darts or chemistry? When it comes to what those darts might contain when we think about World War II. When we think about history, right? We know something about Hitler. We know something about the Emperor of Japan. We know something about Mussolini in Italy, right? We are reading a book, literature, and code talkers about a Marine who is fighting Japan. And we know that they're fighting it in the particular chapter today in Guam. So take a moment to make those connections between all those different subjects and what you see in the painting. Please do so now. All right. Now, what we want to do is we want to record some of that implicit data, right? First, we notice that the paintings are caricature. Caricature. Caricature means like a cartoon / cartoon, cartoonish, right? Actual human beings don't look that way, but there's a caricature of the Japanese emperor or soldier and of Hitler and of Mussolini, sort of intended to poke fun at them. And then you see that there's a little more detail here, right? We get much more, the details are in the hair, movement, uniform, right? We know that some of the implicit data has to do with this movement, this like movement swipe. And we know that these darts probably are supposed to stand for something that has nothing to do with darts, but they have something to do with torpedoes. or bombs, or weaponry. Please take the time to write down one or two pieces of implicit information on the right side of your T-chart now. Excellent. So now we're going to try it with something slightly more complicated than an old political cartoon. And that is a book and then made into a film and then made into a second film called The Thin Red Line about the Guadalcanal around the time that the main character, Ned, would have arrived in the Pacific Theater. Please take the time. You're only writing down things that you see or things that you hear in the explicit side. Please watch the trailer once. All right. And now, on the explicit side, hopefully you've written down a few things that you've noticed. Now, I'd like you to watch this trailer a second time. And this time, once again, you're making those connections that we were making earlier. Do you see anything that reminds you of the book we're reading? Do you see anything that reminds you of a book you've read? Do you see anything that we've discussed in this class before? Is there anything here about history that we're learning? Is there anything here about history that helps us to understand this better? How about physics, right? So take a moment, rewatch the trailer, and then I'd like you to list some of the implicit information in it. Do so now. Excellent. We're now going to read the chapter in Code Talker, and we're going to keep in mind while we read what is implicit and explicit data. Please read the chapter now. Okay, so the last bit is the explicit versus implicit information that we can find in this chapter. All right, and we're going to look at a small piece of it here. So turn on your highlighter and turn it on yellow. And let's just highlight some of the explicit information we get. Then, just after midnight, it seemed as if the air grew thick and trembled. "They are coming," I said, surprised at how calm my voice was. A single scream so loud and distorted that it didn't seem to come from a human throat tore through the night. Shapes began hurtling at us out of the darkness, and amidst the flashing and crashing of weapons, the smell of gunpowder. We were dug in. Many of those attackers were killed by our machine guns, but others fought their way through. At different places in our line, there was hand-to-hand fighting. Each time a wave of attackers was wiped out, another human wave came screaming in. I cannot recall what I did during those hours of darkness, grandchildren. I'm glad that my mind does not allow me to remember. All of those highlighted portions, I'd like you to write as much as you could of those highlighted portions for about 30 seconds or so on the explicit side. Don't change the words, don't change anything. Just write down what is explicit, what is already there on the left-hand side. Please do so now. Now we're going to go back through this, and along the way, we're going to highlight some of the text that might give us some more implicit information that involves other books we've read, math, physics, chemistry, our history class, what we know about history, other books, and what we know about this part of the world. So then just after midnight, it seemed the air grew thick and trembled, right? The air is somewhat different because geography, right? It's a different spot. "They are coming," I said, surprised at how calm my voice was. I wonder why. When that question comes to mind, you know implicit information shows up. A single scream so loud and distorted that it didn't seem to come from a human throat. Why would we take the time to talk about what's human and what's not at this time? Shapes began hurtling out at us amidst the dark, flashing and crashing of weapons and the smell of gunpowder. We were dug in. Do we know what that phrase dug in means? Many of those attackers were killed by our machine guns, but others fought their way through. At different places in our line, there was hand-to-hand fighting. Why go and mention that detail, right? So there was hand-to-hand fighting. Like, you're fighting no matter what. What's it matter? Why? Why mention that at all? Why is that important, I wonder? Each time a wave of attackers was wiped out, another human wave came screaming in. I cannot recall what I did during those hours. Why can you not recall? Of darkness. Why would you not remember hours of darkness? I'm so glad my mind does not allow me to remember. What type of darkness do they mean? Literal, or is it something else too? Take the time to write down 2 to 3 pieces of implicit information now. Excellent work.